Hey, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein. Today we're going to be talking about how to start your business in the new year. So you may be finally deciding to start this business that you've been thinking about and been planning for and researching for a while now, and it is the new year. So let's go ahead and figure out how to get this set up. And so what we're going to be doing in this video is going through all the different steps you need to take. Now, not everybody needs to take all these steps. Some of them only apply to certain kinds of businesses, and I'll address that as we go on. Some of these steps, many of them, you can pay someone else to do. And I'm going to give you some referrals for businesses that I recommend and I'm an affiliate of below, and throughout this video. So if you want to hire someone to set it up for you, it is possible to do. But you can also do this yourself, sort of. So I'll go to things that you actually can't do yourself. The first thing you need to do, if you're thinking about starting your business, you're ready to actually get this set up, is to decide the type of legal entity that this business is going to be. I've done many videos on the different legal entities and the pluses and minuses. But generally speaking, you can be either a sole proprietorship if it's a one-owner business, a partnership if it's a two or more people owner business, a LLC or a limited liability company, or a corporation, which could be an S corp or a C corp. The S and C is not it's a type of tax status. It's not a type of corporation. It's just a corporation is a corporation. And then you can pick which tax status yours is, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. You have to decide which of those legal entities you're going to have. And then if you're going to create an LLC or corporation, you have to decide which state you're going to form it in. Because when you form an LLC or corporation, you're not forming it in the United States generally. You're picking a state. Now, it does not have to be the same state you live in or located in. You can form it in a state even if you've never been there. It's all done online now, so it doesn't really matter from that perspective. But you are now kind of availing yourself of the laws of that state. And so you need to look at, do they have state taxes for corporations or LLCs? How do things work with filing? How hard is it to file? That kind of stuff. So you need to pick that ahead of time. Now, a lot of the consideration, generally speaking, if you have an in-person business, like where you have a storefront, you see clients in person, that kind of thing, I generally recommend filing it in the state that you're in, because you're going to have to file stuff with them anyway, and then you only have to deal with one state. But if you're completely 100% online, and I mean 100% online, or you're not in the United States or something, then it can make sense to file it in a state that you're not in. Generally speaking, people look at either states that don't have income tax or in states that don't have requirements where you have to disclose the name and address and personal information of the owner, and they look at states that are kind of the typical states to form them in. If you're doing a C corp, usually you do it in Delaware. If you're doing a LLC or an S corporation tax status, then you can pick whichever one you want. Typically, people are looking at sometimes Delaware, but I don't recommend that unless you're looking for outside investors. They're looking at Wyoming, Nevada, sometimes New Mexico, places like that, because you're looking at somewhere that's going to have low taxes or no taxes, because you don't want to pay extra taxes, right? And you're looking at somewhere that has relatively low fees, formation, things like that, so that way you're not paying extra, and you can all do everything online. Now, once you decide those things, then it's about actually forming this business. So when you create an LLC or corporation, you have to file documents with the state. For a sole proprietorship or partnership, you don't have to. It's an automatic thing. So this is not a step that you're going to be doing. Most of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about is for LLCs and corporations, but some of these things apply to everyone, and I'll let you know as we go forward. So when you want to actually create the LLC or corporation, you have to do a filing with the state, as I said. One of the things that happens in some states, not all, but most of them, is that you have to have a registered agent who is boots on the ground in that state, who is your agent to accept legal documents on your behalf. Like if someone sues you and they have to personally serve you, they can serve that registered agent person who then gives you the documents. This doesn't happen very often, but it's just a requirement you have to do. This is one of those things you have to hire someone to do unless you're there. So if you're, like I'm here in California, I can be my own registered agent. I just have to give the state a physical location address where me as a human person actually works, which would be here. And then I can be the registered agent for my business. But if you're traveling all the time, you're not in that state, whatever, you have to hire a company to do that for you. Now, if you hire a company to form the LLC or corporation, you could also hire them to be the registered agent. You could also just hire companies to just be the registered agent, and then you do everything else. The fees for registered agent services I've seen ranging from $99 a year to $347 a year. Typically, it's like, $100 and something, $127 a year, something like that. That's a typical amount of money for how much it costs. Now, going along with this, you have to decide, are you going to do this yourself or are you going to hire someone else? Now, there's two recommendations I have, two companies that I recommend if you want to hire a company to handle this stuff for you. One is Northwest and the other is Doula. Doula is especially if you are from outside the United States, because they are very much set up for people who are not residents of the United States, who are not citizens of the United States, because you have a lot of awkward things that you have to do that they know how to handle. But they can also set you up if you're here in the United States. And then Northwest is my other recommendation. They have different price points. They have different services that they offer. I'm going to have links below, which are affiliate links where I get a percentage of like a commission that helps support the channel. But obviously you don't have to use that link if you're not into it. Both of these companies I recommended way before I was an affiliate. I do recommend looking at the different companies to decide if you want to hire somebody before you decide to do it yourself, just to see what the price points are, what services they offer, and see if it makes sense for you. You can also hire one of these companies or a bunch of other companies out there just to be the registered agent and then do everything else yourself. Before you can actually file this business with a state and create the LLC or corporation, you have to get some of the pieces of information that are going to go in the form that you need to file. So one of them is a registered agent, like I said. Another one is a business address. You can use your home address if you're you're fine with having that online. Obviously, if you have a retail location, if you have a physical office, you can use that address. Otherwise, you can get addresses from various companies to be a virtual mailbox. So for your mailing address that you file with the state, that could be a PO box, that could be UPS store, that can be a virtual mailbox like Anytime Mailbox, which I recommend. That doesn't matter. Now, you'll also have a physical location address for your business. That has to be a location where there's like boots on the ground, someone is actually there. For some states, I don't think every state requires that. Now, sometimes if you hire someone to form your business entity, they will also be that address. So you have to look at whoever you might be hiring to see if they will provide that address for you. Sometimes they'll also provide the virtual mailbox address as like a package. So this is one of those things, sometimes if you hire someone to create your business for you, it'll be much more financially efficient because they'll have all this stuff in the package. But you can totally hire someone separately for each of these things if you're going to provide some of it yourself. So you need a mailing address, you need a physical location address that you're fine with being online in a publicly available database, and you probably will need a phone number. Usually, I don't think there's anywhere that you have to have a phone number to do the initial filing, but you're going to need it for other forms later. So you're going to need to get some business phone number that you're going to be able to use for all these different forms, especially like business licenses and things like that will have a phone number that you need to put in there. And it will be in a publicly available database, so you need to be okay with someone calling you on that number. All right, so now you create this entity by doing a filing or paying someone to do a filing. This is a filing you do with usually the Secretary of State website for that state. And it's like the business formation department or the corporations department, something like that. And they will have a website where you can do the filing online. Some places, it's a really nice website where it has blanks, you fill out the forms, it checks everything you do. In some places, it's very awkward and you have to like type stuff in a PDF and upload that PDF, and it takes a really long time. I think every state now does online filing, but some of them are much better than the other ones. Sometimes it's immediately accepted, and sometimes a human has to process it, and so it takes days, if not weeks. So once you get that business entity formed, now you can start all this other steps. And they come back and they say, yes, you filled out the forms correctly, your LLC or your corporation actually exists. Now you're moving on to the next step. And now these next steps are the things that apply to everybody, okay? So the next thing you need to do is figure out your tax status. Usually, if you're a sole proprietorship, your tax is a sole proprietor. If you're a partnership, your tax is a partnership. If you're an LLC, the default is that you're taxed as a sole proprietor if it's one owner, or a partnership if it's two or more owners. But you can choose to have an LLC taxed as a S Corp or C Corp, and a corporation is taxed as S Corp or C Corp. Which one you should do is beyond the scope of this particular video. You're going to be looking at things like how much money you're going to be making, how much complexity you're willing to deal with. It really depends upon the exact business, because this is more of a tax decision than a legal decision. But you need to know which one you're doing so you can do the next step, which is to get your EIN. So if you're a business if you're going to have a sole proprietorship, you can use your personal social security number, but you can also get a EIN, which is like the tax ID number for this business. It's an employer identification number, but you don't have to be an employer to get it. You're going to fill this number in a gazillion forms, and so it's a good idea to just go ahead and do it now, but you're going to need it for all the other forms that are going to be coming up later. If you have a social security number, then you can get the EIN online at the IRS website. That is the best way to go about it, to get it immediately. If you don't, then it is more complicated, and I generally recommend to pay someone to get it for you. So after you do that, then you're going to need to fill out the new form as of this year with the federal government. So this is the BOI-FIN compliance form. This is something where you disclose to the United States federal government who is the ultimate beneficial owner of this business. You're telling them who owns the business, and you have to give them your personal residency address, your home address. This is so they can find the bad guys, is the short version of this. And it's a requirement. You have to do it. It's a horrible fine if you don't do it. Now, if you hire one of these companies to form all your stuff for you, they usually will file this form for you too. But you can also file this online. Next thing you're going to do after this is your first report with that state where you formed it. So this first report could be called an annual report, a statement of information. It depends on the state. And typically this is telling the state, yes, my address is the same, because it's obviously the same because you just filed this 2 weeks ago or whatever, but my address is the same. Here are the owners of the business, or here's the CEO, the president of the business, like whatever the officers are of the business. Here's the kind of business we have. Like from my law firm, I'd be like, this is a law firm or does legal services or whatever. You tell them a little very high level thing of what the kind of business is, and this gets disclosed in a publicly available filing. For the address for the owners, if they require that, you don't have to put your home address, you can put your work address. And typically there is a deadline for how long it takes to file it. Every state's different. Sometimes it could be you have to file this within 90 days or 45 days or something of creating the LLC or corporation. And in some places you actually don't have to file it right away, you file it at the next year. So every state's different. You have to look at the rules for that particular state. But typically if you pay someone to do this, they'll let you add that on as an additional filing, so they'll handle it for you. The next thing you need to look at is, do you need a business license? So not everybody needs a business license, because business licenses are based on your location, either your location of your office or your store, or it's your home address. It's where you physically are. Some places, the business license is by the state. So like in Nevada, there's a state business license. In some places, there is no state business license, and it's either your county or your city, and they might not even have one. And sometimes you only need a business license for certain kinds of businesses. So for example, in California, there are certain areas, if you're not incorporated in a city, then you're just under the county, and the county only has you get a business license if you do if you have like a restaurant, or for an alcohol business license, for certain dangerous things like welding. If you just have like some online business where you sell stuff on Etsy, they are not you don't need a business license for them. However, if you're in a city, they will most likely have a business license, even if you're just working out of your home selling stuff on Etsy or on Amazon, and it's being fulfilled by Amazon. You're not even having stuff in your house, you still have to have one. So it just really depends upon that local location's rules. If you're outside the United States, you have no physical location here, it's all being fulfilled by Amazon or whatever, and there's no physicality in the United States, you probably don't need one. But it depends on what address that you're using as the location of your business. Next thing you're gonna look at is, do you need a DBA or fictitious business name statement file on record? So if you have an LLC or corporation, or you're a sole proprietor or you're a partnership, you can run the business with that legal name. So if I was a sole proprietorship, my business's legal name would be Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. Like, that's my legal name, that's the name of my business. But that may not be how I want to market my business. So let's say I was selling products on Amazon, fulfilled by Amazon products. That may not make sense to have the brand be Elizabeth Potts Weinstein. I mean, you could, but may not want that. You may want some kind of branding kind of brand, right? Then to do that, there's a number of ways, but one of the things you can do is get a DBA, or in California that's called a fictitious business name. In some states it's called a trade name. Every state has to make their own little way they word things. This is something that you usually file at the county level or the state level, depending on the state. You're typically going to get this in states where you have a physical location or you have your office, you're working from home, whatever. That's going to be the location that you're going to use to get this. One of the big reasons you want this is because you can then put that name on your banking and your merchant account and stuff. So when people get a charge for you, it's not from such and such LLC that they've never heard of. It actually has their brand name in there. Generally speaking, if you operate a business and don't use the name of your LLC or whatever, or corporation everywhere, then you need to have a DBA or FBN, except in states where you're not required to. Now, along with this, you have to decide, are you going to apply for a trademark for that branding? That, going into all the reasons of why you might want a trademark or not is a bit beyond the scope of this. But there are times where you very much need it. Like if you're going to be selling products on Amazon and you want to use the Amazon brand registry, you have to at least file a trademark application and get that serial number so you can be in that system. You also may want to just protect your brand, keep other people from coming after you. You want to be able to sell this business someday, and a trademark is an asset to be part of that sale. Many reasons to apply for a trademark. You can apply for a trademark in the United States before you start making sales. It won't finalize until you make sales, but you can file it at the beginning. It's an intent to use application. You can also base a trademark on a trademark that you have in another country sometimes. It's obviously more complicated than that, but it can be possible to do. So this is a good time to think about, does it make sense? Sometimes it doesn't yet because you don't have the budget for it, because you're not quite sure about your branding. So it isn't something that's important for every single business, but it is an important consideration to take at this point. Also, having a trademark can be very helpful if other people are copying you, right? I don't just mean to sue them for trademark infringement, even though that may be true. I also mean people who are just trying to scam others. So I have a trademark on my name, Elizabeth Potts Weinstein, which sounds kind of weird, but it's because I want to be able to go after people who are pretending to be me and get them taken down. Not just for pretending to be me, but now they are infringing my trademark. It's much easier to get, Instagram or whatever to get rid of somebody who's infringing your trademark than to have them get rid of somebody who is just pretending to be you. Another thing you need to look at is, do you need a seller's permit or some sort of sales tax filing? So in most states, this is not going to apply to every single business. So here in California, for example, this mostly just applies to people who are selling products. In some states, it also applies to some services, but not every service. This is a complicated question. But typically, sales tax is based on physicality. So, do you have a location in that state? Are you delivering services in person? Do you have inventory in that state, a warehouse? And by the way, where the inventory is can be imputed onto you even if you're not physically doing it. So you have a fulfillment house who is fulfilling your products and shipping them to people. It's not your fulfillment house. You're paying someone to do that, but your inventory is still there physically, and so as such you may need to file there. Now, sales tax filings sometimes are something you might need to do just in one state. Sometimes you need to do it in multi-states. I actually recommend, there's a couple of services that I recommend for this. I'm going to put one of them in the link below. I think it's called TaxJar. I think they're owned by Stripe now, if I'm not mistaken. And this is the kind of thing that you don't want to calculate yourself. It would just be. So you'd want to pay someone a service to do this for you, either your tax person, your accountant, or a special freestanding service to handle all the sales tax stuff for you. You may not need to do any of the sales tax stuff if you have absolutely no physical connection with any particular state or location, but sometimes you do. This is the kind of thing you want to have someone else figure out for you. Also, if you're selling on Amazon, Etsy, any of those kind of places, they a lot of times will be the marketplace facilitator, and they pay those sales taxes on your behalf, but you may still need to do a filing with your state to let them know that that's happening. It all depends on which state you're in and your exact facts of your particular setup. So next thing you need to look at are business documents. So these are things that don't get filed with somebody really. They're for you to keep in your files to show that you are treating your business like a business. There's less of this if you're a sole proprietorship, but if you're a partner, we're talking about your partnership agreement. If you're an LLC, we're talking about your operating agreement. If you're a corporation, we're talking about bylaws, minutes, all that kind of stuff, a shareholder agreement, etc. These are all documents that you're going to create as part of your business to talk about how the business works behind the scenes, how people who are owning the business are voting, what their powers are, what their roles are, what happens if something goes wrong in the business, what if someone wants to sell their shares, what if one of the partners is disabled for a significant amount of time or dies. All that stuff, you want that agreed to ahead of the time in your business, so you makes it less likely you're going to fight about it later and less likely to have misunderstandings later in the business. All this stuff typically needs to be updated and reviewed on a regular basis, and you have to set it up. Now, for a corporation, you are required to have bylaws and minutes for shareholders, minutes for the directors, and stock certificate and all that. For an LLC, in most states, you're not required to have an operating agreement. I think some of you are, but you're usually not required to have it. But I 100% recommend having it because you want this paper trail that shows that your business is legit. You want to observe all corporate formalities. That way, if someone comes in and says, oh, you don't have really an LLC, I want to sue you personally, you can be like, nope, I have a real thing. Here's all the paperwork that shows that I did everything right. Now, the last thing you're going to look at are all the contracts and agreements for your business. So, your website privacy policy, terms and conditions of selling your products on your website or wherever else you're selling them. You're going to look at contracts with customers, contracts with vendors, contracts with independent contractors, all that kind of stuff. And it depends on the business, obviously, what you need to create. Some businesses have hardly any of that kind of stuff, and some businesses have very formal contracts with a bunch of different entities. So it does depend, obviously, on the exact kind of business that you have, what of those that you need, but you're going to at least need a little bit of it. Every website needs a privacy policy for sure. If you're selling some kind of products or services, you either need a contract for that or terms and conditions about the products and services that you sell. Now, if you're selling only like on Amazon or something, there's less of that, but you're still going to be thinking about those things. You're still going to be thinking about what policies that you have and how you're going to be enforcing that with people. Again, this is attorney Elizabeth Potts-Weinstein. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, feel free to post them in the comments below and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Thumbs up if you found this video helpful. Subscribe for more videos like this. Check out the description for all kinds of different resources that I recommend for creating and managing your business. And I will talk to you all next time. Bye-bye.